Hello and welcome to another episode of The Reject Pile with me, Luke Edwards. In this episode, we'll be featuring material submitted to the series in early 2025 of BBC Radio Scotland's open door topical panel show, Breaking the News, which, remarkably, was the show's 30th series. Joining me to discuss the material are Ellie Hayward.
Hello.
And Dan Sweryt.
Hello.
Two people who are not only seasoned contributors to Breaking the News in their own right, but are also hosts of a training course designed to help aspiring writers gain their first professional writing credit on the show. Welcome, Ellie. Welcome, Dan. Thanks for joining me here in the Reject Pile. I wondered if, first off, you'd like to say a little bit about yourselves and your backgrounds as writers.
Hi, I'm Dan. I've been writing for 20 years now. I'm one of the lead writers for Breaking the News. I'm one of the commissioned writers for The Skewer, and I've amassed quite a few credits and a lot more rejections in that time.
Good. Well, you'll fit in around here.
I'm Ellie. I started writing when I did my degree, which is in script writing for film and TV. And then I kind of didn't write for a long time in normal life. And then wanted to get back into it. And it's always been the comedy side of things that I've been interested in. So I've had a smattering of success on Breaking the News, and I did the course that Dave and Dan originally started, and having done that course, they said, would you like to come on board to do the course with us? And I said, yes, please. Other writing that I've done is quite a bit on The Skewer, and I've long listed on a couple of sitcom competitions, things like that.
Excellent. So you mentioned Dave there. That's Dave Cohen, sitcom geek, kind of writer's advice guru, I would say.
Yeah.
Do you want to just sort of tell us a little bit about the background there behind the course and like how it connects to Breaking the News? What is the course?
The course is a correspondence course. It's like a feedback course. We're not teaching you how to write from scratch. It's people who have usually already submitted, and they want to see what's wrong with their gags. Why aren't they getting the success? So they send us gags every week for 6 weeks, in this case, and we'll feedback on what's wrong with the gag and how to improve it. We will not rewrite your gag for you. We will tell you what's wrong with it. And it sort of started with Dave getting in touch with me saying we can, because I'd done quite a lot on Breaking News, done quite well on Breaking the News with my two writing partners, Stu Cooper and Steve Moynier, better mention them, or they'll get very angry. And Dave got in touch with me. It says we could, help people to get credits, which is why we do this as well. It's nice to help people get credit. So now you're not just looking for your own name, you're looking for other people's name every week. And it's a nice buzz when we help people out. Ellie did the course, was very successful, almost straight away. And it was clear that Ellie knew what she was doing. So me and Dave invited her on board to help with the workload.
Okay, brilliant.
And it's, so we've been doing it all together, for 3 years now.
3 years now, yeah. So we do 2 series a year.
Okay, excellent. So, of course, I knew all of that because I took the course earlier this year.
Thank you very much, Luke.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, and thank you, And obviously, like by doing that course, that is what gave me the idea to invite you onto the podcast. It seemed like a natural tie-in, as you just said there, Dan. Yeah. The course is about helping people hone and craft their material and their submissions and try to avoid being rejected. We're all rejected, we know that.
Yep.
And that's what this podcast is all about. So I found when I was doing the course that there were a number of repeat mistakes that I made. I don't know if that's something you see with a lot of writers, but certainly I imagine there's plenty of things that you see time and time again. I put a call out to our listeners and our network for some unsuccessful submissions from the latest series, for you to cast an eye over, and then maybe we can cover the insights that you're able to give and give listeners a glimpse of the sort of thing they might expect if they were submitting their material to you through the course. First up, let's take a listen to these couple of submissions and see what you have to say about them.
100-year-old Galapagos tortoises are said to become first-time parents. It's hoped that the new children will help them to come out of their shells.
Many Scots are looking for crafts that can be defined as uniquely Scottish. Tweed weaving is also thought to be looming.
Right.
See, I laugh and Ellie's scowling at the same time.
I'll always laugh at the pun as well.
Yeah.
The problem with the pun for your radio show is that quite often the audience will groan and then laugh. And that is not what the producer is
Sometimes they
aiming
don't even
for.
laugh.
Well, they don't even laugh. It just gets the groan and that's it.
Yeah.
So that is why BTN don't always rush to pick them up. But they do put them on sometimes.
They do put them on sometimes,
Yeah.
Funnily enough, I'm in a WhatsApp group with a few other writers, some of whom were submitted to this show. And I just started doing your course, and full disclosure, I am guilty of puns.
Yeah.
That was my most common one. And Ellie was probably at home going, it's another pun.
She said, I remember Luke.
The pun guy.
Luke the pun.
But I mean, yeah, that I don't know what that is. That's just my default setting. And yeah, there was a little bit of dialogue in the group about, thought we weren't supposed to do puns, and a pun's made it in this week.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Is there any comment from yourselves on that? I guess there are no hard and fast rules, I guess.
There's not really. They will do a pun, and they'll do a clever pun, because we all like a clever pun. But from a producer's point of view, I think writers miss out on the producer's point of view. You don't want people groaning through the whole show.
Yeah.
They don't mind one reaction where somebody can go, thank you very much. And it's fine. If a stand-up style is pun, they're going to write a load of puns. But again, from a producer's point of view, what we always warn about is, if you write 2 pages of puns and you're the script editor reading through it, you're just going to get really annoyed. And your names at the top of that, and they're going to, every week, they're going to kind of be a bit trepidatious of your
They'll be
stuff
groaning
then.
as well.
They'll be thinking, Luke Edwards, the pun guy. And you might get moved a little bit because they can't quite take the reading of a lot of puns at the time.
I see, yeah.
So just, and the atmosphere of Breaking the News is like a show full of laughter, not a show full of groaning.
Yeah.
So just from a producing point of view, have a think about what you're doing to the people that are reading your stuff.
On the other end.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can relate to that because part of the process of recording this podcast, obviously I have my cast perform the material.
Yeah.
And when we were in the room, you get that, everything you described, Ellie, that sort of moment while you wait for the penny to drop, and then it's like, exactly that kind of grain.
Well, I guess also is that if the producers are seeing a lot of puns from somebody, it might suggest that they are taking the route one option on a joke. It might be that they're not sort of exploring what could be a different punchline. So really you want to dig a bit deeper than the pun level. Anyway.
The problem with the second one is the rhythm, especially, is not Breaking the News kind of joke.
It's a bit of a double whammy, perhaps,
It is, yeah.
The note on that one, yeah.
Yeah, and the punchline is very short, which, again, Breaking the News could break these rules, but in general, it's not a short punchline. It's quite a long punchline that follows the setup. So to be that quick is not really in BTN sort of house style.
That possibly segues nicely into the next couple that I'm going to show you.
From around about air travel, my cousin is one of those who, whatever the time of day, always has a beer at an airport before his flight, which is why he lost his job as a pilot.
Opera, of course, is no stranger to heated passions and fight scenes, like just the other week when my wife and I went to see Tosca. I forgot to bring the tickets and she nearly killed me. What have we just heard there? What might the notes be for these 2 submissions?
They are sort of the wrong style for Breaking the News.
Yeah.
So you need to do a setup, a straight setup, which is usually the line they've sent you. You can rewrite that. I mean, I encourage you to rewrite that. That's what I do on the course. And then the second line is the punchline.
What was sent through from our submitter was a little bit of context. So, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to include this, because it was the writer indicated that it was from one of the rounds in Breaking the News. So when we get the brief, this round is about air travel.
Yep.
It's very different from the rest, the liners, for example, when you get you're fed the setup.
Yeah.
This writer has written maybe a bit of stand-up style.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, is there how often do you see that sort of thing? And how is it quite common perhaps for people to get lost between different approaches to the liners versus the rounds and that kind of thing?
I think in terms of how we approach them when we're writing is treat them the same. So you're just looking for, if you're in one of the stories, essentially look at the news report they give you. Every line is a setup line. So every line is a liner as per the first and last bit of the show. That's how we approach it. So it's probably the best way to approach it, because that's where we have most of the success, is in those rounds.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I've always said that report they send you, or any report related to that story, look at every one of them as a setup line. Try and write a punchline for every line. I mean, that's a lot of work, but that's the sort of level you should be thinking about, because as you get towards the end of especially as you get towards the end of that report, it's pretty niche, and no one else will be down there delving the bottom of the report, and you'll be able to get an angle out of it that no one else has got angle just because you've read to the end.
Yeah, I mean, I do find that personally, I think one of the challenges trying to juggle this alongside a job, and that's something you say,
Yes.
in the literature that you send out as part of the course, it's full disclosure about how much prep and time people need to be dedicating to it. Yeah, I find myself, I'll go through the brief and I get some of those lower stories, and you're just reading a news article at the end of the day. I'm like, okay, I've kind of forgotten what I'm doing here, and yeah, so the next challenge of trying to extract potential punchlines out of every line. I think, Ellie, you said to me during the course, you can kind of look for one in every paragraph. Dan's up the ante by saying it's in every sentence in every paragraph. But yeah, Ellie, anything from you on wrong style?
Yeah, I mean, the joke that mentions the wife, my wife, Des doesn't do the my wife thing or my mother-in-law or anything like that. That is not the tone.
Like the producers said before, Des is not married. He hasn't got kids. He doesn't drink. So he's not going to do, I was so lauded whenever, just because that's not the style of Des. That's not his character for the show.
I mean, I'm just thinking, is there any really of that sort of stuff where the punchline is Des saying me or I or my? It's more about the object.
No, he'll make jokes about not being able to talk to girls when he was younger. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
It's rare. It's not often that he'll do a my I. It is, as Dave Corkins keeps saying, think of it as a newsreader.
Yes.
Who just has a bit of a sort of left field angle on the punchline.
Yeah, and that example you just gave, sometimes he might do that. Would that tend to be something that is submitted by the writers, or is it something that maybe is it something that Des has contributed to the script or something like that? Do you might not know.
Des has got an amazing memory from what we've been told, so he'll read all the jokes that have made it through the cut, and then he will ad lib them in, or make them look like they've been ad libbed in, which apparently causes consternation with the producers because they don't know who sent that gag. So Des is very quick and has got the best memory in the world. So if your gag is good enough to get through the read through, he'll try and find a way to ad lib it in. I think there's a lot going on that we don't hear when you hear the recording, because recordings are about an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes. And they obviously do a gag at the top of each round, a gag at the bottom of each round, only one of which will ever really get into the edit. But there's obviously, it sounds like it's ad-libbed sometimes when a panellist will say something and Des will come back with a quick one-liner, but he might have had that, because we definitely had that done in our experience, where he's ad-libbed a gag into it, and it's like, oh, Des made the gag work. Not sure it even worked on the page, but do you know what I mean? So, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just generally the my wife kind of jokes, that's also veering into just a different style of comedy, and perhaps leaning towards stand-up and observational comedy as well. But we do tend to get quite a lot of jokes that come in.
We get a lot of stand-up.
I think because people who go on the course might have that background, and we have to kind of steer them away from that, because it's just not akin to what BTN normally does.
I can attest to that. I think I started down that route, but I think unlike puns, I think I took that one on and I started moving away from it.
I think a lot of people do. We get that a lot at the beginning of the course.
Yeah.
And it's steering people away. And I mean, people will still get feedback from us saying, this is funny. So they'll still feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
But they'll get, this is not a BTN joke.
And and again, I can absolutely. That's one of the great things, because obviously this show is about rejection, and rejection hurts. So, and even you guys are doing a great thing by helping and giving the notes. But even receiving notes is a challenging thing, isn't it?
It
for
is, yeah.
Writers, some of whom are vulnerable, sensitive people.
All of them are vulnerable.
Let's be honest.
So your bedside manner is very good. You're often in the body of the email, like really good jokes here. Just a couple of things. Go and have a look in the attachment. So that's a nice little flourish that you add to the way that you approach the course.
Yeah, I think we've had so much rejection and still get so much rejection that we know what it's like. So we are trying to help. And there aren't really, it's all about ideas. And if you've had a good idea and just written the worst version of it, we're trying to help you mold it into the best version of it.
Okay, I'm going to throw 3 different styles at you here.
Okay.
A concert by Bryan Adams in the Australian city of Perth was cancelled because of a sewer blockage caused by fat, grease and rags. Or, as his support act would prefer to be called, Take That.
6 possums found abandoned outside a Lidl supermarket are being cared for at a zoo in West Lothian. Shoppers leaving the store didn't raise the alarm for several hours, however, since they thought it was a bit random, but nothing compared to the middle aisle.
The 2026 World Cup final will stage a Super Bowl-styled halftime show for the first time. One suggestion was an ABBA Voyage-style virtual show involving a classic American rock band known for their face paint and stage outfits. But after the band declined, it was quickly dismissed, as they didn't want another World Cup final marred by a non-consensual kiss.
So a bit of a smorgasbord of styles and tones there. What are you picking up on with those 3?
Well, the first one, that definitely falls into the meme category, I feel. It's funny, don't get me wrong. But
it's a funny joke.
It is funny.
Yeah.
But it's best not to do the mean joke just because it's just not their style.
But also, it literally says in the brief, watch the cruelty level. It's not that kind of show.
Yeah.
And it just feels like you're not reading the brief.
Yeah.
And do you want to annoy the producers if you want to impress the producers? It doesn't really work both ways, I think. So. And again, they will do an occasionally mean joke. Maybe not that mean.
Depends who the target is as well, doesn't it? It's all about the target.
It is, yeah. And take that at the target for tax avoidance, not for just being rude about in general.
What else did we have there in that little mix?
The last one that you read about, about the band Kiss. It was quite a long gag for one thing, wasn't it?
It was very long.
It was too long. And I know obviously these are retrospective jokes on storylines, but it was referring to a story that was previous to the subject of the joke. And that's okay. Sometimes they do pull in 2 different storylines into one gag sometimes. But if that's what you're relying on to get the laugh, it's not perhaps the best decision for that angle.
In a way, it was a bit of a triple whammy. It was the reference to ABBA Voyage, last year's World Cup, non-consensual kiss, and the rock band Kiss.
Yeah.
It's asking a lot of the audience to process in a short time frame.
There's a very specific audience for Breaking the News as well. If you watch the TV version, it's 50s, sort of, not wanting to generalise too much.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You've got to aim for their references as well. I mean, Kiss is fine, but
Kiss is fine.
Are they that relevant now? And people sort of remember Robbie Williams for dressing as Kiss rather than Kiss themselves. But you're right on the triple whammy thing. It's 3 different things, and you're throwing in the World Cup for next year. So you're kind of going future, past.
Yeah.
All at the same time.
Okay, and what else did we have? We had the middle aisle reference.
The
middle aisle
is a great idea. I just don't think that was executed as well as it could be.
What notes might that submitter have received from you, do you think?
I think the first bit of the punchline is not that necessary. It's a bit going around the houses to sort of set up. This is what a lot of writers do, is they have an idea and then they use the punchline to sort of try and guide us right the way around the houses to get to the punchline.
So shoppers leaving the store didn't raise the alarm for several hours.
Yeah. However, since they thought it was a bit random but nothing compared to the middle aisle, I'd have just written, as they'd seen a lot stranger things on offer in the middle aisle. It's just straight to the point. Everyone knows Lidl has a weird middle aisle, so just get to it. You don't need to go around the houses to get there. That makes it too long as well, the original. And just one thing about if you're making if there's a setup line and you need to make a leap to get to the punchline, which is fine, you're allowed to rewrite the setup line. And that's where you should put the important information so that the punchline is like bang.
Another reason why it's helpful to rewrite the setup line is because it makes it more interesting when they're looking through all the jokes to pick them.
Yeah.
Because it's, this is already fresh because it's different. So,
they don't all look the same.
Yeah.
I've read 6 Possums Found Abandoned outside 27 times now.
Yeah.
Just change it to outside a little supermarket there were 6 possums. Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit fresh to the producers, and you're trying to make if you make the producer's life as easy as possible, you will be more successful.
I mean, I did initially say that my initial note was, is it perhaps too niche?
Yeah.
But then, it's just what demographic of the audience shop at Lidl, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a fine. I mean, Ellie don't always agree. There's what's in the zeitgeist, which is a horrible word I don't like using, but it's the only thing that sort of fits.
Yeah,
is what people will recognise straight away, and there's quite a few in the gags we've been discussing. And what people won't recognise straight away. So and that's the difference between the reaction of the gag. If I imagine, Ellie might disagree, a lot of people know middle aisle of Lidl is the stuff that you don't normally get in a supermarket. They're your chainsaws and your small toy cars and things like that. And that will be evident in the reaction of the audience, because Des will do the gag and you'll either get a big laugh or you'll get a smaller laugh, which means it probably won't get broadcast, or you'll get a little bit of a laugh and then another laugh and then a bit of a laugh as they all get it, and that won't get in the broadcast because it's too long for the laugh, or you get a groan, which might be as good as a laugh in that case, or you'll get no reaction whatsoever, and then you've got no chance of getting in the broadcast.
Yeah, and just a comment that I'd like to make from performing that and reading that out. There's that however in the middle of the, and I was tripping over that as a performer, and I wonder if maybe there's something in that as well, that just trying to remove these obstacles as much as possible.
We find a lot of obstacles in the way, and I think we always say things like, try not to use however, buts.
Yeah.
My personal bugbear is a spokesman said, which
we might have some of those.
Really frequent, and this is where
I guess it's a bit because it's a topical. That's a bit of a newsy sort of thing, so people might just think, "Oh, I'll put that in."
And if you're trying to introduce a new idea, you think, "Oh, it's got to come from somebody, therefore a spokesman."
I think that's it. Yeah, and I think a lot of what we go on about, and I imagine you've had this feedback, is you're trying to create an immediate visual image that pops into the listener's head, and by using a spokesman, you're already one step away from. You can fabricate a reality. It's a gag. So things can happen, not libelous things, but silly things can happen. And if you can create an image that pops into somebody's head of Mick Jagger with a flower pot on his head, that pops into your head. But a spokesman said Mick Jagger was wearing a flower pot on his head, is not as immediate into somebody's head. And that's where you get the sort of surprise laugh where people laugh straight away because it's just ridiculous and they can't help themselves. That's what you're aiming for, really. And the howevers and the spokesman.
Or apparently, we get that.
Apparently.
And it seems.
Apparently. I don't really want to make a joke. Kind of. That's what he says to you.
Yeah, it's got to be, the punchline's got to be delivered as an absolute, with conviction.
An absolute truth.
Yes.
Yeah. And anything that
interesting.
distances you from that needs to go.
Yeah. I think if you do that regularly, you get on. But it's the hardest thing to do and writers are generally quite introverted, don't want to offend anyone. You know what I mean? They'd be happy with an email back saying, we liked your joke, not necessarily broadcast. But you kind of got to get over that and create these visual images so people can't help but laugh.
Okay. Anything else on old?
As well as too old, too new. Just bear in mind the demographic of the audience. So, and I mean, the producers are guilty of this in the brief sometimes, because they'll send us a brief about I know who Taylor Swift is, but because my daughter knows who Taylor Swift is.
Yes.
And then there'll be some new person that not even she's heard of. So I've got no chance. And even between me and my two writing partners, well, I literally don't know anything about that. And that's where you need to hone your ideas. But the audience in the room might not know who that is. So don't be too specific about Ariana Grande, because the audience won't know enough about her. They'll know certain things about her. So you need to go a bit broader and make more of a joke that everyone can understand. That'd be more inclusive with your audience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, always what you're aiming for with the joke is the instant recognition, instant laugh, and anything that delays that or might confuse or take a bit of processing time is not going to work.
I've referenced a few times the experience that I've had by being able to record this in a room with people, which obviously we don't have when we're sitting at home writing.
No.
Is there any sort of insight into your own writing process, or perhaps others that you're aware of, as to how might a writer be able to gauge how long it takes for the penny to drop and to connect the ideas, and how quick the example being with recording some of these, it's really audible that there's 1 or 2 seconds before the other people in the room laugh. Does that prompt any thoughts?
Yeah, for you? I mean, when I was writing on Breaking the News, I would write with Joe Cunningham, who Dave Cohen introduced me to, and we used to write together, and we'd have our jokes on Google Docs, and then we'd have a Zoom call, and it really helped to read out each other's jokes at each other, because that is the moment you really learn what's not working, what is working, and I'd really recommend getting a writing partner. Not my fault. Angle that in here now. But it really does help the process. And if you can't do that, then just read it to yourself out loud, because there might be moments that you stumble on, and it's worth doing, I'd say.
Yeah, the reading out loud helps. I mean, full disclosure, we don't do it anymore. But we've been writing for Breaking the News since Series 5. So this was our 26th series. And we kind of know the game now.
Yeah.
So we know what works and what doesn't work.
Okay. Got a couple more for you. Here we go.
A new TV show based on the children's party game Musical Chairs is set to hit the screens, tapping into viewers' cravings for nostalgia and happy childhood memories. Rumours are also circulated about a show involving a piñata, but it turned out to be a particularly harrowing scene from the new series of All Creatures, Great and Small.
A veterinary nurse has been struck off after she fell asleep on an elderly dog during an operation having taken drugs meant for animals. Apparently, this wasn't the first time she'd fallen asleep at work, although, in her defence, last time she was performing an inventory on the sheep.
Okay, so what's jumping out at us there?
Both of them are quite wordy, quite lengthy to get to the punchline. I mean, broadly speaking, most of the BTN jokes are just 2 sentences, so we can see initially that the first one certainly isn't hitting that.
No, it's a gag that's come from an idea that the writers had, and then they're trying to sort of shoehorn what's not quite appropriate into it. And then piñatas were not really a thing in my childhood. I don't know. And giving my age away, it seems to be sort of a new thing. And it's talking about musical chairs, fair, pin the tail on the donkey and stuff, and then piñatas are a new thing to me.
Yeah.
So they weren't a game there. So you kind of, the writers had an idea of get the piñata in. They might be a lot younger than me. They probably are, to be fair. And all these words have been used to try and force it in.
And also, All Creatures Great and Small is a bit of a mouthful in itself.
Yeah. I mean, it creates a funny image.
It's
and
a
the
funny
harrowing
gag,
scene is a funny phrase to come out of nowhere. So I can see why they've done that, and it is a funny scenario that they've described, but it's just too protracted. And I'd say also the initial setup. The funny thing is musical chairs, and I think it feels like a shame not to exploit the essence of the setup in the punchline. There's not a direct connection there.
Sorry, do you mean that the game Musical Chairs is what's funny?
Yeah, I mean, it starts off as being funny, and it's such a kind of rich topic, I feel, instantly in your head anyway, that to not lean into that for your gag seems a bit of a shame. And I'm not straying into the, I know I say don't take the obvious route, but at the same time, don't miss an opportunity to use something that's, a nice, magical, funny image.
Yeah, it's already quite funny. People are already walking on chairs in your mind, so you've already got a visual image. Let's make that a funnier visual image. And again, in this one, rumours are also circulating about a show where don't do rumours. Rumours isn't apparently. Rumours is a spokesman.
Yeah.
Rumours is just say that they were hitting a piñata in the new series until they were being sued by all Creatures Great and Small or something like that. Yeah. Is a quick way of doing it as well.
Okay. And the veterinary nurse.
I really like this idea. I mean, it really makes me chuckle, but I just felt it took too long to get there.
Yeah, and it's got an apparently in it. So
Okay.
again, we're one step away. I really like the joke. It's, when sheep come up, you do the people falling asleep. However, when sheep come up, everyone does the people falling asleep. And it's just to get onto this subject. Don't write an obvious joke, but you can write an obvious kind of joke, but everyone's sending the same gag. So your joke now has to impress the producers. It has to be better than everyone else's gag who's written that gag, because only the best one's going to get said in the room. So you've got to aim high even with your hack jokes, for want of a better phrase. So, I mean, this is a good gag, and inventory is a good way of framing it, and I like that already. But I should just rewrite it as it's the second time she's done this. The last time she was inventorying the sheep is shorter, punchier, just gets to the point.
Another thing from the recording session is that the setup itself is funny. We couldn't get past the woman falling asleep on the dog.
I think Dave always mentions this as well. Not just for breaking news, for anything. If a story is already funny, how would you make it funny?
Yeah.
So you might think, whoa, the woman's falling asleep, so it might make a good skewer sketch.
Yeah.
But how are you going to make it funnier than the news report? This is a problem with Donald Trump and Boris Johnson, who are already funny. How do you make them funny if the story's already funny? Be very wary about how you're going to make it funnier than it is. What you'll essentially get is people laughing at the setup line. And this has happened in breaking the news. You listen to it sometimes. Des has just said a line that no one's written. It's just come from. So who do we credit? The people who wrote the newspaper article. And you can see he's struggling because there's obviously a punchline that follows and the audience are already laughing, but he doesn't want to stop. And we don't want Des talking when the audience are laughing. He doesn't want to be talking when the audience are laughing. I think we mentioned this to some writers as well. It's probably a good time to go into that. Funny bit always has to go at the end because of that very reason. You want the audience laughing and Des not talking. If you put the funny bit in the beginning of the punchline, they're not going to hear the rest of the punchline, and it's not working. A lot of stuff is too long. A lot of stuff is too long. And I think the main thing we tell to writers is cut every word that you don't need. And if you look at it in detail, there's always words you can cut out of it that are just not necessary for your gag.
I think one of the big pieces of wisdom that I got from the course from you both was that sort of sweet spot. I think you say it's between, so when you've got it formatted in the right font size and the right font, looking at on the document between 2.5 and 3 lines.
Yeah.
And generally using that as an aim.
Yeah, it really does help as well when people send us the work in the font size and the 12 bold calibri bold font. It's helpful because if you put it in that format, then you can literally see whether it's hitting the 2.5 to 3 lines of text. So you know you're in the right framework to begin with. So that's so helpful.
And I wanted to pick up on that, Dan, you're saying about cutting as much as you can. And you mentioned early on that some of those lines are too short. So is it is there an element of, if it is shorter than 2.5 lines, it's too short and maybe you don't need to be going for word economy, even if it's there for the taking, it just might make it too short.
If they use a short gag, it'll be within a round, and it won't be the top or the tail of the round. It'll be in the middle with Des sort of maybe ad-libbing it. So don't not send them in. But they should read 2.5, 3.5, especially the openers, the liners, and any formal gags, for want of a better word, in the rounds. But it's just good practice, because to be successful at this, you need to do a lot of it. So write to what they want, don't try and change the rules of the game, because you're not gonna. They've done 30 series of it. It works.
Yeah.
They know what works.
I'd say that the people on the course, each time we run the course, the people who are the quickest at realising it has to be that short can't kind of progress better, because once you've got that work out the way, if you tend to write too long, the quicker you can realise don't write that too many words, then you can move on to the grittier stuff of structure, where the funny bit is, how much you're changing the setup. You can kind of get to the good stuff, but sometimes we feel there's a little bit of resistance. Oh, but this is just how I write my gags. Please don't know.
But I mean, it's good advice for any show is listen to the show. The show's got the Breaking News has that format because it works. You wouldn't write that for the skewer and try and get John Holmes to say, you wouldn't argue with him saying this doesn't work because the skewer is not that. Well, Breaking the News is not the skewer. You can't send them a skewer sketch. So you can't send them and DMs are open gag. Do you know what I mean? They're not quite the same. They're similar, but they're not quite the same. So don't try and. It's not your show.
Yeah.
It's their show. Do what they want.
Yeah.
Is the advice, really.
Yeah, and I get that's a hallmark of, that's what it takes to be a successful writer.
It does, yeah.
Is that situational awareness and tone, like sensitivity to the tone. Okay, let's move on to Donald Trump has passed an executive order requiring Google Maps to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Subsequent orders will see Canada renamed That Bit Above America and Greenland America Extra Cold. East Lothian Council has proposed a 10% increase in its council tax, becoming the first Scottish local authority to confirm a double-digit rise. Affected residents have made their feelings known by offering a single-digit response. Okay, what's jumping out at you with those two?
With the first one, I really like this. Well, I really like them both. But I felt that in the punchline, the bit where it says we'll see Canada renamed That Bit Above America, I feel that's the funniest bit of it. But it goes on, and Greenland America Extra Cold. So it just kind of loses the momentum and the best bit. So just a little bit of reworking, and I think that would be a really, really strong one.
Yeah, and it's got two funny bits in.
Yeah, just go with
two
one.
Funny bits. Go with one. Write two jokes. Write one with one, and one with the other one. The only time you don't want to do that is the rule of three. And even then, you don't really want three funny things. You want two things that are recognisable, funny thing at the end.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're trying to be too funny.
Okay.
Do you want to do the other one? The single digit?
I really like this joke.
Yeah.
I know it's rude, but not rude enough. You can get away with it at half one. I think the kids probably won't understand.
Yeah.
It's sort of. I often said don't repeat words in a setup and punchline, but the gag is the repetition of the words. That's what's really good here. Just on that, it's if you've just generally as a note for that is if you're saying Keir Starmer as part of the setup, say the Prime Minister in the second bit of the setup, don't say Keir Starmer again. It just sounds really clunky. And if you say it out loud, you'll understand. And I'm sure with some of the recordings that sort of came across. But this gag, it's exactly the right length. It's got the rhythm and the pacing, which is, if you do the course, everyone will hear rhythm and pacing from me. It just feels like you could imagine Des Clark saying this and it working and everyone laughing at the end. But yeah, I really like this one.
Yeah, I concur.
Okay. Well, perhaps that's a good way for us to round off. So we focused a lot on the notes that would be given for these submissions. And Dan, you mentioned this to me. We're not obviously giving these writers the right to reply, which they would have on the course. So, we didn't want to go down the route of modifying these submissions on behalf of these writers. The concept of this episode is giving people a taste of the sorts of things that they'd get back from you. And then it's for them to take the notes forward. Yeah. But what I thought would be useful, given that I've been through the course, would be to walk the listeners through my journey through that process on one of my submissions. So I'm just going to play the before and then the notes that I received from you and then the after. A Glaswegian fish and chip shop, described as the oldest in Scotland, is celebrating its 150th birthday. It's a phenomenal achievement, but what's more remarkable is that its jar of pickled eggs has been there the whole time. And then I think I got the notes back from you on this one, Ellie. And if I just read verbatim, nice universal nostalgic gag, which BTN like. You could improve this by making the last words of the joke jar of pickled eggs, which is exactly what we were talking about a minute ago. And also, it's a phenomenal achievement, made even more remarkable. Doesn't feel like the right choice of words, so see if you can find another way to lead to that jar of pickled eggs. Any extra comments that you want to add?
No, I think that phenomenal is a hard word to get out when you're just saying phenomenal without other words around it. So, yeah, that was good advice from my colleague.
Thanks,
Well done,
Dan.
Ellie. And this is what I ended up with, and I sent in.
A Glaswegian fish and chip shop described as the oldest in Scotland is celebrating its 150th birthday. The business was established in 1875, which means it's almost as old as its jar of pickled eggs.
So I think what I took from the notes was to get rid of the phenomenal achievement and end up on jar of pickled eggs.
You could still cut a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because you've put, it means that, but you can create that image almost as old as its jar of pickled eggs.
So that wasn't included in the show, but it just goes to show that even when you factored in the feedback and crafted the submission, you can still be unsuccessful. So how do you folks cope when your submissions are unsuccessful?
Wow. I just say you just got to keep going. You just got to keep writing, keep submitting, understand that it happens to everybody, and stick with it, because the tenacious people who keep going and keep submitting week on, week out, your work could be getting recognised behind the scenes, because even if you don't get your joke on the show, you might have got into the script. You might be in a folder on somebody's laptop that says, this stuff is always good. And you just got to keep turning up, basically, haven't you, Dan?
Persistence is fertile.
There you go. Dan's favourite phrase.
I don't think about it as rejection. Your job as a comedy writer is to write 2 pages of great gags in response to every brief. That's your job. Your job is not to be broadcast. Your job is to get better as a writer. And you can only do that by writing what they want every week, and you get better. And we see people getting better as the course goes on. Like just in this last course, there was somebody was sending quite a lot, and it was very stand-up to start with. And it was trying to bring them around to thinking, you're not a stand-up here, you're a working writer, think of yourself as that. Well, I say, if you get 2 pages of gags into every brief, maybe not the Wednesday night one, that's a bit of a hard ask because of life, but you can get 4 pages in every week and do it for the 10 weeks. You've done your job. What more can you do? You might not get on, but you'll be better as a writer. And that's the job, not the getting things broadcast. So don't worry about rejection. That's not it. We're all rejected. We're still rejected now. Andy Hamilton was talking to somebody about still being rejected for his latest sitcom. And if Andy Hamilton can't get something on ITV, do you know what I mean? It is the job. And I've got an actor friend who says the job is going to auditions. It's not acting. It's not the job. The job is really going to all these auditions. And basically, when he gets a job, that's a holiday for a couple of weeks. And that's it's all the creative industries really. You do your bit. You can't control what goes on, what gets broadcast or not. You can only control what you do, and you should be proud of yourself for meeting the brief and writing good gags.
Yeah. Don't the BTN team, Dan, haven't they said in the past that week 5 they tend to see a drop off because it's people just losing the will, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But you've got to keep going.
They drop off. I think it's 5, 6, and 7, and then for some reason there's a peak in 8 and 9 again. And then everyone has a go in the last week because it's the last one. But genius is hard work. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to write one gag, and we get a lot of people who write 2 or 3 gags a week, and they might be perfectly serviceable gags, but they're not improving because they're not banging lots of gags out. And a way of doing that is write 10 gags about one thing. Like I said, with all those feed lines, try and write 10 gags from that news report, or even try and write 10 gags with the same opening line. And see how much better you get just by writing 10 of them. You'll realise how much better you're getting. But your job is to write comedy, not to lament not being broadcast.
What advice have you got in terms of, well, no, not advice so much, but just your own experience in terms of how much time you invest or, have invested over the years, to how much does it take? Because I think we kind of mentioned earlier on, it can be labor intensive. And obviously a lot of people who are in this situation are aspiring writers. They're doing it alongside a full-time job or, family, parenthood, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think if you're thinking of embarking on the course, you do have to feel that you can carve out hours on the Tuesday evening and the Wednesday evening.
Yeah.
And on the Thursday for last minute things, if you can squeeze in 10 minutes. You really do feel that you should be able to commit to that, because then you'll get the most out of the course. And
So
that's the reality of writing for the show.
it is, yeah. So you get the brief at Tuesday afternoon, the first brief. And then we say if you get it to us by half eight, we'll get it back to you that evening. So you still have time to rewrite it before work the next morning, because it needs to be in by noon on Wednesday. And then the same thing happens just early afternoon on Wednesday. You'll get another brief. And then again, we'll read it by 8 to get it back to you. If you send it after 8, we can't guarantee we'll get it back that night. We'll still give you the feedback.
Yeah.
We usually do, but we have to have a cut-off point so that we can sleep. That's what you're aiming for. In terms of time taken, me, Steve, and Stu spend about 5 hours a week each on breaking the news, and we write. There used to be no limits on what we were sending in, and we were sending 18 to 20 pages of gags a week. And now we still write that, but we have to be a bit more selective about what we're sending. And we've kind of got in the group. We know what a BTN gag is now, so that's 20 pages essentially of BTN gags.
Yeah.
And, that's 15 man hours a week. Sorry, person hours. But you've got to imagine that the people who are getting on the list of names are spending that time, because there's a lot of names on there who are on there week after week after week. They're putting the time in. They're not just writing 4 gags and getting 4 gags on. It doesn't work like that. Even if you're an established writer, you've got to put the effort in.
And that's another thing. If your long-term goal is to be a lead writer, they want to know that you can fish out jokes for every round, every section of the brief.
Yeah. A lead writer, what they've asked for before is 8 broadcast quality gags per round, and a lot of openers and closers. So the lead writer's writing that, and they've got no limits. Do you know what I mean? They can. So you're competing with that to start with. Then you're competing with the other lead writers who are not lead writer that week, but are still submitting because they still like getting their gags on the radio. Believe me, we still like hearing them. So you've got to keep going. I mean, one of our two members of our course have gone on to be lead writers on the breaking quite quickly as well. I think they had a very good run,
like
and
the next series, I think.
and got on the next series.
Yeah.
So the chances are there. And the production team will give you feedback at the end of the series. If you email them afterwards. I sent 3 gags in week 3. Remember me?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You want to be able to email them with confidence at the end of the series.
Yeah. So if you put the effort in and then ask, it's kind of a payoff for you knowing that you put the effort in. They'll have recognised your name. There's only a team of 3 reading the gags.
Yeah.
They'll recognise, especially if you're writing good gags. Or if you're just writing puns, they'll remember you as well.
Either way.
But yeah, it's effort, and we put a lot of effort in. We get a lot of stuff broadcast, but it's I think Ellie's writing partner Jo said to me she was very disappointed to find out it was hard work that led to our successes.
Yeah, that is a shame. Okay, thanks very much. So before we move on, I just want to give a shout out to the writers who shared their material with us. We had submissions from Mike Grace, whose portfolio you can find at clippings.me/takingthemic, Nick Ilukumbere, who you can follow at gichow.com. That's GICHOWDOTCOM on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Mike Cooper, who you can find on Blue Sky at Mike Cooper RP. And James Docherty, who's on Threads and Instagram at J_S_Docherty. That's DOCHERTY, and Blue Sky JS Docherty. Some of those writers took the opportunity to submit some questions to you. So You've sort of touched on this, Dan, but if you've got anything else you want to add to it,
I can keep talking. Ellie usually has to shut me up.
Here they come.
Hi, Dan, Luke, and Ellie. Why is it always mainly the same few writers who appear in the credits?
I think it's hard work. They're putting the hours in, and they've got better and better. And I mean, if you look over Breaking the News as a entire entity, the lead writers there are now were not lead writers, but they were getting stuff on, and they probably started getting one or two things on. Then they got a bit more regular, and then they worked their way up to lead writing. And it's just time and effort and persistence.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay. Next question.
Hi, Mike Cooper here, long-time listener, first-time caller. You guys work with other writers. How do you find the one? Or the two, in your case, Dan? Thanks.
Mike's going for our job because he's a Cooper, and if Stu's ever ill, we're still Cooper Moinis for it.
Well, I found, as I said earlier, Dave Cohen put me in touch with Joe Cunningham when I was writing for Breaking the News.
How did that come about? So under what circumstances is Dave making that introduction for you?
Not the Cilla Black of comedy writing world.
Joe and I had each done his other course for sitcom writing. He takes you through a 6-week course to produce a sitcom.
8 weeks.
8 weeks. Oh, God,
that's
sorry,
hard
it was a
enough,
long
not
time ago.
6.
8-week course. And Joe and I had both done that independently, of course. And there was a point when you, Dan, were saying if you're writing for topical shows, it does help to have a writing partner to, accountability, all that. And so Dave said, if anyone wants me to kind of matchmake, play Cupid, as it were, let me know. So I emailed Dave, and he suggested Joe, and we had a couple of Zoom calls, and off we went. But he said, you're not getting married. If it doesn't work out, it's all fine. Just see how it goes. And we just said, let's just do one series and see how it goes. And it worked out, and we did quite a few series. So, and we're writing on other stuff together now. So yeah, it really does help, and that's how he put us together. But I'd say a lot of writers do tend to be on socials and stuff. And I'd just say put it out there, say that you're looking.
Yeah,
Had you tried with anybody else prior to that, or is this just a lucky
this was
first time?
First time,
Yeah.
first one. Yeah.
I'd written with other people before, and we got credits on things, but they get interested in other stuff. Me and Stu and Steve had just sort of come across each other because we were getting things on recorded for training purposes and Newsjack back in the day and stuff like that. And there's a very long, convoluted story about how we got into, which is a whole podcast in itself, how we created a podcast with Alison Pritchard, who's another writer who has a can-do attitude, and a writer with a can-do attitude is a producer. And she got us all together and started writing stuff, and we created Live from Curran Island, which led to Dan the Torpedoes and us, running our own podcast and things like that. And me, Stu, and Steve were the script editors on that, and sort of came about. And that was 12 years ago. I know because my daughter was born very early, and it was like the week of we were recording this podcast. And she's 13 in a couple of weeks. So, yeah, 13 years we've been writing together. And it just seemed to work. We kind of get each. I mean, me and Steve agree on practically nothing. And then Stu has to decide, and he often just sits on the fence. But he has to decide one way or the other, which is quite good because we've not all got quite the same sense of humour, but we are tuned into each other. So, do you know what I mean? If you listen to a lot of the Skew, you kind of see what I've written, kind of see what Steve's written. Although it is a collaborative effort to come up with it, there's just a little bit of nuance, as everyone says nowadays, because it's a new craze. But a writing partner motivates you. So you don't really want to let them down. And that is really good in a comedy writing sense, because there's more motivation than just, I'm going to write this sitcom at some point. And now it's like, oh, hang on, Steve needs to do a rewrite, Stu needs to do a rewrite, so I need to get on it and do it. And that's how it works. And the best jokes we get on are one of us has written it and the other two have rewritten it. And I mean, that it used to be more common, but now we're all tuned into the same thing. It's a lot easier for us to just bang a gag out and there's nothing to rewrite. But it always helps when we're talking it over. On social media, people put a lot of hashtag BTN rejects.
Yes.
I mean, this was back in the day when social media used to work. But I think that's the place to look. We, not with Ellie, but with Stephen and Stu, we met on the British Comedy Guide forums. I don't think they're as popular now, but there's a group of us, and we sort of found our gang on that group. And then through this, Ellie and some other writers, we're kind of another gang, aren't we? And we work on stuff together as well. And other people help motivate you. So it's finding online where to go. And
it sounds like it's being open to it is the first thing.
Oh, it is.
Open
It is,
to opportunities and introductions.
That's
and
not
that sort
natural
of thing.
for comedy writers.
Yeah.
They are naturally introverted. They're quite shy.
And I wouldn't say you have to get too hung up on about, is this the right person from the get-go? Just, as I say, just frame it as, let's do this series or this episode or this session even, just
We've had
try.
a couple of people on the course that were writing with somebody on the course, and then they're writing with somebody else and getting credits. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it didn't work out. It's fine. Just you might not be tuned into each other and stuff like that. So I think that's fine. It's just fine. I mean, the comedy British Comedy Guide conference is a really good place to go because you will meet people there. I mean, it's a great.
Yeah.
But you'll meet a lot of writers who are like you. And I mean, I'm quite introverted, but in the Comedy Writer Conference, I'm like the extrovert because I seem to know lots of people, but I know they're all writers, so it's easy to get on with. But I think they're doing another one in September.
Yeah,
Bit
September.
of a plug for them. But go to that if you're a comedy writer because you'll learn more, but most importantly, you'll meet other writers.
It's networking.
It is
And
networking. It is. It's
using
uncomfortable.
Social.
It's an ugly
It is.
word.
Yeah, it is.
But Dan, you've talked about online social network.
Yes, yeah.
And then there's opportunities for in-person networking. as well.
Yeah. Don't email Dave Coward asking for writing partners.
No.
He's had enough of that.
Can you matchmake for me, please, Dave? Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much for that. We got one more question.
Hi Dan, hi Ellie. What's your process for creating successful material for the skewer, and how does it differ to shows like Breaking the News?
Well, the skewer differs to everything.
Yeah, that's
If
a
anyone's
whole
heard
other
it.
kettle of fish.
Do not write for the skewer if you have not listened to the skewer. You can write for Breaking News if you've not listened to Breaking News. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can kind of get in the area of a gag, and you can write for DMs Are Open if you've not listened to DMs Are Open because it's a sketch show with gags in it, and you will not get anything on it, but it'll look a bit like a DMs Are Open gag or a DMs Are Open sketch. If you write for the skewer without listening to it, it will not look like anything like a skewer sketch.
Yeah, John the producer will know if you haven't listened to the skewer and you send him a normal sketch. Yeah.
So, that's the first insight then. You're writing a sketch.
Yes. Think of it as a traditional sketch, but all the lines have already been written and they exist somewhere on the internet, which is a big place.
John's key thing, isn't he, when he talks about the skewer, he says it's not about writing, it's about listening.
Yeah, there's a whole guide to writing to the skewer on the Unusual Productions website where John's written something and then I wrote something and John's kindly pasted it on at the end, which is from a writer's perspective, which is worth reading.
Yeah.
Even if I say so myself. It's just
No, it is, really.
Just so I don't have to keep repeating it. And point 1 and 2 are listen to the skewer. But the key thing is when you write a sketch, you have a good idea that you think is a bit funny, and it's no different in that way. That's what you're thinking about. But now you have to find 2 ways to convey that idea, and this is the non-traditional bit through the medium of a TV show or a game show or something, a song, a meme.
It's a mashup.
It is a mashup. It is, but it is a funny sketch. It's a line and then something that either points out the hypocrisy if you're going for the pathos, or something that just sounds ridiculous compared to what
the
you've
juxtaposition, isn't it?
So one of our first sketches on was Taskmaster, and we found the best of Taskmaster on YouTube, and Greg was taking the mickey out of somebody for failing a task miserably. And then it was at the time when Matt Hancock was doing Test and Trace on the Isle of Wight, and it just failed miserably. So all we did was do all these lines from Greg Davis, and a news report with Matt Hancock where he was just apologising for test and trace going wrong on the Isle of Wight.
Yeah.
And it just worked. But that's the funny version, and it was quite satirical. But it was a funny version because we all knew Matt Hancock was a bit of a muppet at the time, and Greg Davis was not forgiving him for it. So it's that kind of thing. So I think we all think we can't write for it when you first listen to it.
Yeah.
And I think Ellie thought
Yeah.
that. We certainly thought that.
Dan
and,
was saying from really early on, get writing for this year. And I was like, oh no, I couldn't possibly. And yeah, I'm glad I eventually did, but I'm kicking myself that I didn't start sooner because I love it.
Yeah, and it's a bigger buzz than anything when you get. It's a lot more work.
Yeah.
Which is probably why
Your
it's a bigger buzz.
weekends are shot.
Why can't I find Matt Hancock saying exactly these words? Because he might never have said that. Do you know? So I would recommend finding the things, the clippings, the media that you need before you email John with your idea. Because if he says, write this, and you think I need to find Boris Johnson saying this or Donald Trump saying this, you will never be able to find it. Because even using, I'm quite techie and I can find stuff if I need to find it, but even I can't find some of this stuff.
In terms of the process, I guess it's emailing John, isn't it? And you pitch some thoughts.
Yes. You're writing a pitch to start. You're opening. We have a course for this. Let's get the plug in for this as well.
Dan does the course for
We
the
have a course for this where we're writing a pitch to John. And everyone can do it. You don't need to do the course. Everyone can pitch John, and he's very receptive to it, and he really likes giving new writers credit. So what we're trying to do is jump you up the list because we kind of know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So let's make the pitch as good as possible so John can't say no. So people will send us their ideas, and we're not going to rewrite it for you. It'll be a good idea, but it'll be, well, why have you put 3 different stories in this? So the skewer it's one story, and you're trying to satirize it.
Yep.
Don't try and satirize 3 or 4 things at once. That doesn't work.
Okay, so finally, before we wrap up, where can people find out more about you, the work that you're doing, as well as learn more about the course and how to enroll?
The courses are on Dev Cohen's website, and that's probably the easiest way to find it. You can find me and Ellie on various social media.
Yep, I'm on Twitter at Ellie Hay.
And I'm on Twitter at Sweryt D, and I'm on Blue Sky at Sweryt D. Everything's Sweryt D.
How's that spelled?
SWERYT D.
And the Ellie Hay is Ellie and then HAY. Not as hey, hello.
Sweryt is nearly all on one line on the keyboard. It's all next to each other on a keyboard.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
So you could headbutt the keyboard, and it's probably my username. And I'll try and get my website back up running. I had a falling out with the website company, but I'll try to get back on. But get in touch with us on social media if you want more details. And then we'll probably run a webinar before the next running of the course, because we tend to do it so people can ask questions, and we go over usually the same stuff that we've talked about today as well. So we'll point you in the direction of Luke's podcast.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. And it's the same point of reference for the Breaking the News course and the Skewer course.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So thanks so much, Ellie and Dan, for joining me for a rummage through the reject pile and sharing your wisdom with the listeners. For those at home, please do send in your rejected material to rejectpilepod@gmail.com. We're open to anything, stuff you've submitted to competitions, open door shows, comedy, drama, music, you name it. Check out our socials. The best place is probably our link tree, which is linktr.ee/rejectpilepod. And please do the usual by subscribing and spreading the word. This has been The Reject Pile. I've been Luke Edwards. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
UK doctors have reported an increase in a Victorian-era disease, such as scabies. This has come as quite a shock, as many hadn't realised the GP wait times had gotten that long.
East Lothian Council has proposed a 10% increase in its council tax, becoming the first Scottish local authority to confirm a double-digit rise. Affected residents have made their feelings known by offering a single-digit response.
100-year-old Galapagos tortoises are said to become first-time parents. It's hoped that the new children will help them to come out of their shells.
The UK government has announced that thousands of taxpayer-funded credit cards will be cancelled under plans to crack down on wasteful spending. News that was welcomed on opposition benches, with Suella Braverman fully supporting the move, as she is all for withdrawing visas.
Many Scots are looking for crafts that can be defined as uniquely Scottish. Tweed weaving is also thought to be looming.
The joint administrators of Inverness Caledonian Thistle have announced there have been no offers made to take over the League One club. Having been in administration since October, even the most ardent of fans now fears the worst. Yes, Super Cali optimistic, expect a poor prognosis.
A veterinary nurse has been struck off after she fell asleep on an elderly dog during an operation.
You said veterinary.
Yeah, how do you pronounce that?
Veterinary, yeah.
Veterinary. A veterinary nurse has been struck off after she fell asleep on an elderly dog during an operation.
That's just ludicrous as it is. Where do you go from there?
A veterinary nurse has been struck off.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I do.